Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hi. Welcome, everybody, to our She Ventures Summit. Give everybody a moment to just go ahead and log in. And Barbara, thanks for joining in.
Yes, very excited.
Lots of fingers and toes were crossed today so that all technology would work to make this happen.
It's the theme of the year.
Definitely. Well, thank you for everyone that's joining. I see people are logging in. My name is Georgina Miranda, and I'm the founder of She Ventures. And we'll just give everybody a few minutes to get joined here and make sure nobody else is having issues logging in. Barbara, you can hear me okay, right? Just a quick sound check.
Yep, no problem.
Great. All right. Well, to kick us off, thank you all so much for making the time today to join us. The She Ventures Summit is brought to you in a partnership with 4XI Global Consulting. So thank you so much to Barbara, who you'll meet soon, and the team. And if you're not familiar with She Ventures was formed in 2016 as part of an event series, actually, and it's evolved into what it is today. But what we like to say is that we are unleashing the untapped power of women because we're good for the world. And so I think today you'll hear from a lot of amazing women that are having a tremendous impact in the world across the board, from business to social impact, to just driving change and equality all around. So I think you will see what happens when we are truly unleashed, what we are capable of and what we can do. So besides being the CEO and founder of She Ventures, I'm also a mountain athlete and a writer, a speaker, a yogi, an energy and mindfulness practitioner. And you'll see a lot of this come through in our conversations today. And yeah, so with that, let me hand it over to Barbara, my co-host for the day. I also happen to be the Explorer in Residence at 4XI Global Consulting, so that's how we're connected. But Barbara, without further ado, Barbara Boden.
Hi, thanks, Georgina. And, it's great to be here. And I really appreciate you and She Ventures for including me and partnering with 4XI Global Consulting and Solutions. I was fortunate to have spent over 18 years at JP Morgan Chase, where I was able to build and manage a global amenities department. And that consisted of 225 employees, over 2,000 contract staff, and we supported 250,000 global employees around the world. And when I think back on my success, there are a lot of bumps in the road. However, what I'm most proud of is that we had a team of very diverse global people that brought a lot of global perspectives. And I really, to this day, think that is the key to our success, but to the success of any organization. I left JP Morgan in March of last year and COVID hit. And I had been a hamster on a wheel for many, many years and traveling around the world, working all the time, and not having a lot of time for myself. And so being forced into this downtime during the pandemic, it made me realize that I needed to pause and change course. And being an entrepreneur was not really ever anything I ever really thought about, but it came to fruition over the past year, and I couldn't be happier. I have my own schedule. I create balance in my life. I make sure that I come first. And that's very different. And I think you will see that as companies come back. I think you'll see, more companies being focused on people and mindfulness and health and well-being of their employees. And, now I hope I can just help employees and individuals along the way. I want to say having a summit like this is so important to share stories, insights, experiences to help others navigate their lives and careers. I didn't have that access coming out of college or in any of the early stages of my career. It was kind of just, figure it out. And, even when I graduated, I tell the story all the time. I was given a book that was called Dress for Success. And basically it told me to wear a suit and dress and act like a man. I would say that we've come a long way since then, but we have a long way to go to create equality in this world and give everyone more choices. So thank you. And I'm excited to listen and learn today as well.
Thank you, Barbara. Yeah, and I invite everyone today to please, if you have questions along the way or anything else, please go ahead and pop them in the comments feature. We will try to answer as many as possible. And why are we doing the summit? If you're familiar with She Ventures, you'll know that we've hosted over 25 events across North America and hosted a series of virtual events, office hours, podcast, you name it. And there's just so much opportunity to amplify more women's voices. And the more that we can learn from one another and collaborate, it really creates amazing, infinite possibilities, I'd like to say. This event is open to everyone. It wasn't a women's only event, because you can only drive change if you have full awareness, and full awareness means you have full awareness of the challenges that different people face in the world, like this pandemic. It has impacted the entire world, but it has not impacted us all the same way. And, if you look at the communities that have been most impacted, the marginalized communities, women, it's really drastic, the level of disparity amongst that. And so we're not here to pretend that everybody has an equal playing field, even amongst the community of women. And so it's creating space to have those honest conversations and welcome questions and share the honest truth, but also share solutions and what's working. Because we have made a lot of progress in the world, and you'll hear those conversations today. I love that we can talk about our work and well-being. Our final panel for today, where we have the Chief Heart Officer for VaynerMedia joining us. I mean, how great is it? We live in a world where we can even have a Chief Heart Officer. That that wouldn't have existed, over a decade ago. And so, if you were to ask me, what is my drive to continue to put on these events, to continue with She Ventures and all that, it's just that there is a need. We are still not living, as Barbara said, in the equal world. And I know to my core that women are this largest untapped resource, and that when this power is unleashed, when we're given equal opportunities, we are the biggest drivers of change, whether you look at it from an economic, social, or environmental standpoint. And so I think that will all come to life in today's panels and conversations. And, this is just the beginning, as I like to say. And right now, with what's happened in the world, we have the opportunity to shape a new future. So how do we want to shape that? And is it going to be one where we really value all people and our planet equally so? April 22nd is Earth Day. And, what happens with media a lot is that we compartmentalize everything. It's like, ooh, April, Earth Month. March was Women's History Month. And I really wish people would see the intersectionality across everything, the intersectionality that comes with equality, the intersectionality that comes with taking care of our planet. And hopefully that comes through today in the summit as well. And Barbara, I don't know if you have anything to add before we jump into our first panel.
Just very well said, and I completely agree. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you to everyone joining us. A few more thank yous before we start to all of our speakers. They are all donating their time, energy, and wisdom for the summit. So a huge, huge thank you to each of them. And also a thank you again to ForexI for partnering with us on this, and to all of you for taking the time to be a part of these important conversations. So with that, we're going to jump into our first panel, which conveniently is Barbara and I talking about being the CEO of your life. And just to give you a rundown of events today, so that is our first panel, and then that will be followed by the Ultimate Resilience Founders and Wellbeing panel. We'll take a short break, and then we'll jump into the second half of the summit. So why have a CEO of your life panel? We have a lot of amazing CEOs that are participating in this summit. And, maybe a lot of you watching have the dreams and goals of one day becoming a CEO of your own company or another company. But really, that role starts with ourselves. And there's a beautiful quote by Gandhi. And he said, "You must be the change you want to see in the world. As human beings, our greatness lies not so much in being able to remake the world, that is the myth of the atomic age, as in being able to remake ourselves." And I love that. And as you get to know me, or you've ever worked with me as a consultant, which I also do, I forgot to leave that out of the bio intro, is that change starts within. Companies have hired me all over the world to talk about change and transformation. And really, you have to start from the inside out. And so if you want to take ownership of your career, of your business, or anything like that, it starts with you. And so, Barbara, I'm curious, what is this aspect of, so CEO of your life is one thing, but really it ties into personal leadership. So what does that mean to you?
I think personal leadership is an understanding of who you are and who you want to be and how you interact with people and the world around you. And it's important that you control your destiny and your decisions as much as possible. So in order to do that, I think you have to truly understand your strengths, your weaknesses, what's important to you, and actually how you're perceived by others. So it's digging deep. It's having confidence and self-awareness, and then building your personal brand and your goals and creating a vision for your life. And I believe in visualization and really that it's hard to move forward if you can't visualize what you want. And it's a journey.
Yeah, it is a journey. And for me, the personal leadership ties into how are we keeping ourselves well, physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally? What is this aspect of a whole human being? And so often when we think of our careers, we jump straight into just the work piece, right? But then there's so many other elements that make us the beautiful human who we are. And so when we start to compromise those other aspects of ourselves, then we start to sometimes see the effects in our work as well, right? Or we could super thrive in the workplace for a bit. And then there comes a moment where we hit a crossroads potentially, or it's just not sustainable.
Yeah. I mean, so many people are getting burnt out right now. That's one of the biggest headlines that you hear. And I think it's absolutely that people really have been stressed during this time, or, kind of like me, realized that, I was on the treadmill and I wasn't jumping off, and I needed to slow down.
Yeah. And so when did that hit? Where did that moment hit of like, gosh, I really need to prioritize and be the CEO of my life? When and throughout the trajectory of your career, did that light bulb go up?
It was actually interesting. I was in my 30s and my younger sister had just gotten married. And I was, a social butterfly, and I was busy and I had lots going on, but I felt that I wasn't moving forward, both personally and professionally. And I was offered a promotion and a job that I went for, and it was in Chicago. I didn't know a soul. I didn't have any friends there. I didn't know the city at all. And I just felt I had to just take a right turn and go somewhere else. And I did. And it was the best decision I ever made. And it made me really focus on what I wanted. And 6 months in, I was actually offered a job by a client of mine. And that's where I started at Bank One, which then eventually turned into JP Morgan when they merged. And I also met my husband there. And it just, changed my life. But what I really realized in that journey was I took a big risk, but I was the only one that could change my life. I was the only one that could be in charge of my destiny. And I think that awareness took me a little while. But after that, I think that things became much more apparent to me in that way.
Yeah, no, and it's interesting. Always, I ask the question, like, when did it hit, right? Because there's usually like some type of moment that happens where we realize maybe the path we've been on, there's something that could be enhanced or changed to support us better. For me, it was, this is my third startup. So She Ventures is my third startup. My first startup was in real estate development. And thanks to the last financial crisis, well, that was the end of that startup. But luckily, it actually had a positive ending. We were able to return all of our investor funding, which was really great, and still build out a few great projects. But it was my last startup before this one that I had to end up shutting down. And by the time I did it, I was like, oh my gosh, I lost everything, meaning my personal savings. But really what I had lost was my health and well-being. And that was way more valuable than the finances, so to speak. And that's where the light bulb went off. And just my journey meeting so many other founders, and also spending over a decade in management consulting and having a lot of clients that on paper or in the eyes of the world were super successful, but behind closed doors, not so much. And so there was this, gosh, if you're going to build anything, you have to be able to build yourself first and be able to be like 100% whole, and have that level of compassion and self-care for yourself in order for you to ever have it for other people. And so that's really shaped the trajectory of my career, of my life, of everything. But I had to give it to myself first. And so often, women, we're nurturers. We give everything to everybody and we're last in line to receive. And so if you're listening to this and this resonates, I would love to hear in the chats. Please go ahead and post some comments if you've struggled with this yourself. But there's this moment of we have a decision. And we have a decision of the leader we want to be. But great leaders lead themselves first. So let's talk about the importance of accountability and responsibility, because obviously we started this conversation with the world is not equal, and obviously women, especially women of color and marginalized communities, face all sorts of different challenges, additional challenges. But at what point do we take accountability and responsibility for our lives, for our career, for what's happening? Meaning sometimes we know there could have been a better way, or there was a mistake made. How do we learn from them and go forward?
I think you're always under a microscope, and particularly today, right? The social media is out there. You have to be conscious of what you say, where you say it, how you say it, and you're not going to get everything right. And you need to own up to your mistakes. I think that's number one. And trust me, you'll gain respect if you do. And I think some of the most important growth moments, at least in my career, have been when I've made big mistakes, right? And I learned from them. And once again, being self-aware, really listening to constructive feedback and being willing to change. On the other side, I think that's also important that you take chances and you have an opinion. If you're afraid of failure, you won't grow personally or in your career. I think there's a balance between being too cautious and taking risks, and women are more afraid of failure than men. I can tell you for managing so many people over time, that the one thing that always stood out to me was that women tended not to ask for more responsibility as much as men did. The promotion, even the pay, right? You'd see men fighting for things like that way more than women did. And, it was something that I did do in my career. I never got a promotion or more responsibility or a pay that I didn't really push for. And so I think that, it's really important for women, no matter where you are, to own your own, path, your own vision, and make sure that others around you are aware of what you want out of that as well. And don't be afraid to take those risks. And as a leader, be supportive of those around you as well. It goes both ways. I think women sometimes have gotten a bad rap of being not always as compassionate as men have, and that needs to change, especially women with women.
Yeah, you bring up an excellent point, which is collaboration over competition. And I hope that the summit really drives that home. You know, we are stronger together. And this has to do with mindset. So, you know, the two things, what are the two things we can control in our life? Our mindset and our energy. And mindset, so much of like modern day culture has kind of programmed us to have a scarcity mentality, especially when it comes to women and marginalized communities. And like, there's only so many roles. And so, it can get really cutthroat a bit to try to get to the quote unquote top, right? But this is where the accountability, responsibility, self-awareness comes in. It's like, who is the person that gets to the top? Who are you? And how do you want to achieve that? There is enough room for all of us to thrive, so much room. And we have to carve those spaces though, because that's more of the issue, is that the spaces haven't been carved out yet. But there is space there. I think when it comes to accountability and responsibility, I mean, the hardest person to let down is yourself. That is the hardest person to let down. And so it's taking time to invest, to really get to know yourself, your values, what you stand for, your non-negotiables, and playing by those rules, really creating your own rules. I too was programmed to play the boys' rules, men's rules, to make it in a man's world. I've worked in primarily male-dominated industries, from starting off in aerospace, if we want to go way back. My first job was in supply chain management in aerospace, to then real estate development, to management consulting, to entering the outdoor industry, to entering mountaineering, all of these places. I mean, I was often the only woman in the room, mostly the only person of color in the room. And so I had to develop my own playbook. And I would say early in my career, I tried to play by other people's playbooks, or the playbooks that I saw people succeeding at. And there was always those moments where it didn't feel like me anymore. And so then it's like, is that worth it? and it's not.
Right.
It's not, And the reality is, and this might sound super cheesy to use this word, and we're going to use a lot of words that maybe haven't been used in business traditionally, so that's okay. Again, we're creating our own rule book. But there is power in shining. We got to shine. Like, when you don't shine your light and you dim it for somebody else, that's where you kind of get in trouble. Not with anybody else, but you get in trouble with yourself, because now you're compromising everything that you're capable and potential of, because you're trying to fit into somebody else's playbook or getting to the top their way. You're going to get to the top your way. And what's going to make it great is that nobody else can get there but you.
Right.
That's your secret sauce, like that's your magic. And it took a long time to, I guess, have the self-confidence to do that, because there's always the imposter syndrome that plagues a lot of us. I don't care how successful you are, at somewhere in your path, you've experienced it. So Barbara, you mentioned there was an 18-year career in finance.
Yeah. I have a good story on that one. So it was 2004, and we were in the middle of this JP Morgan and Bank One merging. There was a lot of tension. It was a big merger. And I was fortunate enough to be asked to move to New York City from Chicago and create a global dining department at the time. And my boss was my boss at Bank One. So that was good. He had a lot of confidence in me and why I believe I got the role. But his boss was a little bit more skeptical, and also not just of me, but of everyone. And he really challenged me. And he said, okay, you're going to run a global department. You need to get on a plane. You need to go to every single one of these countries and cities. And then you need to come back and you need to tell me what the plan is. Okay, well, I hadn't been to most of these countries ever. And, I really had never run anything globally. I was, I ran a US department. And I remember getting off the plane in India. And back then, it's not even close to what it was today. The sanitation, the issues that I saw, I thought, what am I doing? Like, I'm not prepared for this. I can't do this. I'm crazy. But at the same time, I had to worry about, I was the breadwinner. I needed to keep my job. I just moved my fiance at the time and myself to New York City. And I just decided that I was going to lean on my team, lean on my connections, think about things the way that I knew how to do things, which was very much a step-by-step process. And you know what? I did it. And I did it over time, and I did it the right way. And it was great. And in the end, it led to me getting more and more responsibility over time. But I think the main message is you also just need to believe in yourself, and the imposter syndrome is such a terrible, it's such a terrible phrase. And you're not an imposter, you're you. And just, you have to have confidence and self-worth and know that you can solve problems. And just because it's not in your resume doesn't mean that you can't move forward and progress. You can. And I think that's also another thing that women have to be very conscious of, that, men will go for things a lot more than women will, because we're so set in, do we have the right education? Do we have the right skill set? Do we have this and that? Sometimes, you got to jump off the cliff and figure out how to fly.
No, I love that. I can't tell you how many women I've coached that to go after that new dream role or reposition their brand or their new company or anything else. And we're pulling out, okay, like, what is this juicy story we have to share with the world, or this potential recruiter or your potential whatever. And it's like, oh, well, I don't know if we can say that in there. Well, I did do that, but, and it's just this, like, you're really pulling to try to get it all out. It's like, come on, did you do it or didn't you do it? And when you look at the stats of who applies for roles and the percentage of qualifications necessary to apply for the role, men will apply for roles with 60% not even, up to 40% of the qualifications. And women need to have like 80% or higher of the qualification, like truly believe they have those. And, when you're making big leaps and changes in life, you have to be really mindful of how are all of your life skills and work skills applicable to that next thing. It's not going to be so literal.
Right.
But we've all been on this journey of life and our careers and our work. And we're not tied to that first thing we ever did. I mean, can you imagine if I was tied always to my first aerospace supply chain management consulting job? I wouldn't be here talking to all of you. But, and I would have put myself in a box. And so I think part of the imposter syndrome is giving yourself the freedom to take yourself out of any boxes and create your own, your own brand, your own space, own your value, own what you bring to the table. And when you find yourselves in rooms where you're like, oh gosh, should I be in this room? Of course you should. But don't look at it as, if I think of all the rooms that I was like, gosh, do I belong here? Or I don't feel like I belong here. The way I was able to stay there and then was, how can I actually add value? Because each of us can actually always add value. And I think when you look at it from that perspective, instead of like internalizing it so much and just looking at it from a value perspective, then everything changes. You're not really trying to get anything at that point. You're giving.
Right.
And so, I think that that's something that we all have the opportunity to do. It is a journey. I think that that's like a fine dance we have to play throughout our lives, right? If we're challenging ourselves, you brought up a great point about the failing and everything else. Like if you're playing it safe, you're maybe not having to, dance these fine lines so often because you're in your comfort zone. But
Right.
the minute you push out of that,
Mm-hmm. You'll grow. You'll grow. If you push out of that, you'll grow. And, and it doesn't mean you're not going to fail along the way, but get yourself back up and keep going, and you just have to, and hold your head high. That's the other thing, just own it, own that mistakes happen. And I think people will appreciate that more than they would appreciate, just, oh, I'm sorry, and that's it. You just have to keep going.
yeah, and I think that that's like you're living your own hero's journey when you fail and owning that adventure that's taken place. I as you get to know me and my adventurous spirit, I see everything as an adventure. I mean, like I've tried some crazy stuff. It hasn't always worked. But had I not even tried, my life would be so different. And really, it goes back to this self-internalizing. We always feel like the whole world eyes are on us, but everyone else is pretty self-involved. We all are, human nature. So like sometimes we think something like, oh my gosh, everybody knows I tried and it didn't work or whatever it is. And that's not actually true. The only person that knows that is you. And give yourself a pat on the back for trying.
Right.
For pushing your boundaries past where you are today, because you're never going to get to that next level if you don't push the boundaries.
Right. And use your network, use your support system, and make other people part of that too. I think that's something that, really will help you, no matter who you are or what you're trying to do.
So let's jump into some practical advice here before we have to wrap up for our next panel. What are some top 3 things people can do today to start on this journey of becoming the CEO of their life?
I think that top 3 things for me is envisioning what you want your life to look like. Because if you don't have a vision, and that vision can change over time, don't get me wrong, but you should be able to visualize, and then don't try and take everything in one chunk, right? Take step-by-step approach to what you want to do and how you want to do it. And like I said, no one can read your mind. So no one's going to know what you really want unless you communicate that to your boss, to the people that are around you, your husband, your family, your friends, anyone, your network, anyone that can help you. I think it's important that that you communicate that, and then you do everything with confidence, and you aren't afraid to take some risks, because you won't move forward if you don't take some risk, and you don't want to play everything so safe.
I love it. No, and like I said, I'm a risk taker, so I think that that's really where you discover your own magic, and you're going to discover your own resilience, which we'll talk about in the next panel, and just really like what you're capable of, because you don't discover your truth and everything you're capable of in the comfort zone. You just don't. It'd be really nice if that's the case, but it's not. And if you can look at it with awareness and openness to not just focus on how hard it was, but actually like where it really pushed you to go, then yeah, it's can actually chart you on a whole new path.
Right.
So
it's easier to reflect back than it is to go forward. But honestly, now you can look back and say, okay, those things were successful because I took that risk. And I think that, and like I said, sometimes you fall down, but that's okay.
Definitely. And I also love what you said about the vision piece. If you aren't familiar with vision boards or just visioning exercises, I can't recommend them enough. Having a vision for your life is super critical to not go off path. And I will just say, don't limit your vision to your current reality.
Mm-hmm.
because you're going to create a new reality for yourself. And we all have to start somewhere. You know, if you think of the most remarkable people in this world, they all started somewhere. And somewhere was quite low sometimes.
Right.
With lots of failures along the way. They didn't, you know, we always hear these success stories when everybody's at the top. But there's a lot that happens in between, you know, and that's not always what's shared. So don't let that discourage you from having a grand vision.
Absolutely.
But I would just say, for me, you know, top 3 things that you guys can all do. If anybody's listening, it's like, okay, CEO of your life, interesting panel, great, get it. What can I do? 1 is commit. Commit, make the decision. Like, gosh, you know what? I haven't been the CEO of my own life. I'm going to start today. Commit to your personal well-being, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual well-being. Get that tip top. And it all starts with baby steps. It's not like, you know, today, let's use meditation, for example. You decide to meditate and you make it through 2 minutes and you're like, oh, it's so hard, I'm done. You know, all of these things are a practice. The next is don't let yourself down. So I said it earlier, the hardest person to let down is ourselves. So don't let yourself down. Know what you want, go after it, take those little bite-sized chunks, steps, and you will get there eventually. And it actually might all look different. And be open enough if along the way what you thought you wanted has shifted, because that happens too.
Right.
And the last one is invest in your growth. So you're your best investment. So think of how much money and time and energy companies invest into becoming the best, right? With the talent they hire, with the resources, facilities, everything. You're no different. So invest in your growth, whether that means, you know, if you don't have a huge budget, we have a really beautiful world of free information and knowledge available to us, you know, on YouTube, on, you know, Googling things, like so many things. Just invest in your growth. And if you have the resources, coaches, if you don't, you know, reaching out to mentors, it's really endless. But you are your best and number one investment. And so I hope that you all commit and start to make that decision today. And I'm sure many watching and future people that will be watching will be great CEOs out in the world. But I, more than anything, hope you'll be your best own CEO first.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anything to close, Barbara, before we jump into our next panel?
Nope, I think you said it, and I think that it is really important to own, you know, your path and your journey, and everyone's is different, and don't compare yourself to somebody else. You know, I think that's another piece. It's be your own individual person. So thank you.
Thank you. I just did something funny with the screen and now I put us on the wrong. Bear with me, everybody, today as I experiment with the technology that is for this conference. So thank you so much for joining us, Barbara. I'm going to just transition us into our next panel, which is all about resilience and founder life. So Barbara, we will see you shortly. Thank you so much.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Bye, everyone.